Welcome to In the Loop Podcast, a podcast that is inspired by the breakaway roping lifestyle. I'm your host, Jordan Joe, professional rodeo athlete, NFR qualifier, and business owner. My goal is to promote the sport of breakaway roping, alongside with celebrating and highlighting elite competitors in and out of the arena. This podcast shares the raw and the real of breakaway roping, bringing you behind-the-scenes stories from competitors, producers, leaders, and the trailblazers, all sharing stories of the Western culture and the lifestyle that they live daily. Join me to talk about breakaway roping, the history, the present, and the future of our sport. If you want to be in the loop, you're in the right place. Thank you for joining us. Take a listen. Okay, guys, so today we are here with Nikki Nelson, and she is the owner-operator, girl boss, lady boss of Nikki Nelson Coaching. And so I am very excited to have Nikki on board. We put out an exclusive offer on our social media handles that we wanted to feature up-and-coming businesses, and it was really on my heart to be supportive of that because just last August, I've officially launched Fabrizio Marketing as my own business. And so I have really navigated through some of the struggles as being a first-time entrepreneur. And so I really wanted to feature all online businesses and or coaching platforms that were new. And so Nikki and I came together and here we are. So Nikki, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. We were doing a little bit of the backstory here earlier, and we've got some juicy things up here we're going to talk about. But tell me a little bit about you and your family and your journey to becoming a coach.
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah, and when I was 13, my neighbor invited me over to ride his horses. So that's kind of where my journey all starts, with horses, rodeo, roping, all of that. And then from there, he introduced me to high school rodeo, and that is where I met my husband. I actually met him out at Silver State. So we weren't necessarily high school sweethearts, but we've been together ever since our senior year. 4 years ago, we moved from Utah, and we are now in southern Idaho. And we have started roping again, which, if you ask my girls, we rope way too much. So
I don't know if you can rope too much. I mean, really?
I don't think so either, but they get tired of being at the arena sometimes. So if it was barrel racing, they'd be more happy to be there. But
well, and you and I were just talking about roping, and one of the iconic legendary ropers is Joe Beaver, and you were talking about how he'd helped you a little bit, and he's helped me too. Last summer, I talked to him a little bit too about some things, and my husband and him are really good friends, and so it's just so amazing how small knit this community is of just the rodeo lifestyle, the Western industry. It just all brings us together. But just coming back to a little bit of where you're from, Utah is one of my most favorite places in the world that I've been able to travel to thus far. And it is beautiful. I would not want to live there in the winter, but it is beautiful in the summer. So talk to me a little bit about Utah and just kind of some of the things that you guys do around there and what you do in your downtime when you're not roping.
Yeah, no, since moving from Utah to southern Idaho, people ask me how I like it here, and I like that we don't get as much snow here, surprisingly, but I don't miss the snow in Utah. It's been so cold. In our old neighborhood, we have like 2 feet of snow still, but I miss the mountains terribly. It's so beautiful. And I miss the hunting and the fishing and hiking, because when I'm not roping, I like to hunt, I like to fish. And then surprisingly, I also really like to garden and can food. I'm like this 70-year-old woman in a 30-year-old body. I really like to can foods, make jams and jellies. That's my jam.
That's my jam is my jam. I
Yep.
love that. So my grandmother, my dad's side, my dad's mom, she was a canner, and my grandmother on my mom's side cans too. But my grandma Glenna was a canner, and she canned everything. And I so wish that I would have learned how to do more of that. Which my grandma Joe probably could teach me. I'll have to throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, it's so neat how history comes full circle, and it's like you grow up and you're like, "Ah, I would never want to do that. And then as you get older and you start to value things, and like you and your family and your health and all of those things that go into what you're a part of now, it really makes you think about the food that you eat and the nourishment that you put into your body and where it's coming from and all of those things that we can dive into. So yeah, I think that that's pretty neat, even though you're acting like a 70-year-old lady. Maybe I'll join your 70-year-old lady club.
There you go. Do it. It's kind of scary sometimes, but it's really relaxing and therapeutic for me to just sit there and make peaches or whatever, and then we get to eat them later, and it's delicious. So it's fun.
Who doesn't love peaches? I will say Coeur
Right?
d'Alene, Idaho is one of my favorite rodeos, and they have the most amazing peaches ever. And they're fresh, and they make breakfast for all the contestants, and they had pancakes and peaches. And I thought, who in the world eats pancakes and peaches? Like, ew. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a new tradition for my family. I'm doing this now. This is amazing. So yeah, it was that you guys have some good peaches up there.
We do. We have good peaches.
So let's dive into a little bit about what you're doing here. You're a movement coach, personal trainer, corrective exercise specialist. That's quite a few things behind your name right there. Kind of a big deal. So talk to me a little bit. I am not a mom myself, but I do have a lot of friends that are mothers that are mothers of, 1, 2, 3. I don't have anybody that's like a mom of 10 yet, but I'm sure it's coming. But yeah, I mean, so you and I visited a little bit about the pelvic floor and some rehab and some things like that. I train personally with Doug Champion Living Fitness. He has taught me so much, but there is such an advocate out there and such a vein for fitness and truly body health, physical health, mental health, nutritional health, emotional health, all the things. So tell me a little bit about where you're specifically targeting and what it looks like to be a movement coach for you.
Yeah, so like I was telling you earlier, I have 2 kids, but after I had my second, she's 7 now. So in 2016, when I had her, I developed core and pelvic floor dysfunction. And originally at my 6-week appointment, I asked the doctors, something's not right. They couldn't figure out what was going on until about 2 months later. And the only thing the doctor said to me was, there's nothing we can do for you. You will never ride again. You will never rope again. You will never be able to lift more than 15 pounds again. And you can't run. And aside from roping, I also run. I used to run half marathons quite a lot. So that was really, really devastating to me, as you can imagine. I remember sitting in the back of my car after I loaded up my kids. I had a 3-year-old and a newborn at that time. And I remember sitting there just sobbing to my husband on the phone and him not knowing what to say. Because my history, my journey into rodeo is unique in and of itself. And so then to have it all ripped away again, because I didn't have the support in high school, and I depended on a lot of people. And then I had just started getting back into rodeo when this all happened. And so it just felt like my life fell apart. So I put out like basically a help me please on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I had this wonderful woman that had the same injury as me that had been able to heal through corrective movement and corrective exercise. And I joined a program and I started doing it. And 2 years later, the founder of that program reached out to me and she said, "Hey, you're a perfect candidate to become a teacher." And she's like, your story is so inspiring. Because at that point I had started riding a little bit. I couldn't go more than a trot for very long without being in pain. But through that program and then adding more training, understanding more about the body, I've been able to heal myself to the point that last summer I started roping again, started competing again, and I'm feeling good and I'm feeling strong. So through that, though, I realized that not only was I targeting my core and pelvic floor, but really the core and pelvic floor are just a small area of your body, and everything is so connected that by doing the exercises that I was doing, I realized that I was a much better rider, and I had a lot more range of motion and power in my shoulders, in my hips, and it's made me a lot better roper. So, and that's kind of where Nikki Nelson Coaching comes in. I do still teach core and pelvic floor exclusively for private clients, but I don't teach that anymore in groups. And now I'm just solely focusing on rodeo women who want to get a stronger core, more range of motion, stronger hips, and just be able to ride and rope better. So.
Well, and so, I mean, I'm just like in awe over here. I want to know more. I want to hear about your timeline. How old was your daughter when you found out that, like you said, your dream was ripped away from you again? So walk me through that process and that timeline, because, I don't know what this is like by any means, but I really want to be an advocate for your story. Is when we want something, or when I want something, I don't know, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I'm like, I want it right now, like yesterday. And so, man, how did you get through that? Like, what were some of the things? I know you're probably your husband, your support system, but like, how did you mentally get through that and find the will to, make the small steps every day to keep going?
It was really, really, really hard. You can tell I get a little bit emotional about my story every time I tell, because I've come so far. But I remember I actually did have to be admitted to the ER a few times for massive depression. My husband had to come home from work a few times because I couldn't deal with life. I was in so much pain. Everything felt weird. Everything felt over. But to get through it, I actually had my sister move in with me for a while to just help with the kids, because I didn't feel capable of being present for them. So I wanted somebody that could come watch. I have a newborn and I have a 3-year-old, and juggling all of that. But then it was really my husband who recognized very quickly that I needed professional help. And he got me to a doctor and to a therapist. And I've been in therapy ever since, because I've realized how important that is for me, even without having the depression, because I really don't struggle with depression anymore right now. But even just my mindset for competing or business or being a mom, there's so many things that the mental health side of things really, really helped. But I had a massive support system. A lot of rodeo friends came out and held me and helped me. And, people went grocery shopping for me in that time. So having a tribe was massively helpful and necessary. I wouldn't be here today if they weren't there. So,
well, and that's one thing about our community that I truly value and love. But I want to go a little deeper here, because this is a scary thing to talk about, right? And we don't, in society, in rodeo especially, it's like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm moving on, I'm moving up, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. But then what happens when you're not good? And I think therapist is such a scary word. But then, like, once you've been a part of it, you're like, hallelujah. I can talk about some of these things, and you're listening and you understand, and I can work through this. It's instead of letting, whatever the trial is, the challenges, instead of letting fear just invade you and just be a stronghold and just hold you captive, you can work through those things. And it is our choice. But, just so many tools and learning. And so I'm interested to hear about your experience, if you're willing to talk about it a little bit. And if you're not, I'm totally understand. But just your experience on working with the therapist and working through some of those things, and then how that tied into your physical journey along the way.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really open about my journey with mental health side of things, because like you said, I think in the cowboy world, I love country music, but I absolutely hate the song "Cowgirls Don't Cry." Every time I hear those words, I just want to scream, because I think in rodeo, especially, we're taught, don't show emotion. You have to be strong all the time. Pain is just part of the game. And you're not allowed to show emotion, and you have to be strong all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have people riding with broken legs and broken arms, and we're just kind of taught to toss it to the side. But my journey has really helped me step back and realize that it's okay to be hurting. And it's okay to take breaks, and it's okay to ask for help. I ask for help every day now of, hey, I need help with this. I'm very, very, especially with my husband, we have a very open relationship, very open communication of, I need this, this, and this today. Can you help me with that? And whether it's big or small, I think the rodeo community is so unique, like you said, about tight knit. In high school, I didn't have my own horses, and I borrowed 11 horses my junior year of high school to get through rodeo. And I was telling you, I lent a friend a horse this weekend. And so our community is so tight knit, and we have that family feel. We just need to be more open and accepting of the help. So many people are not willing to ask for the help, but if you do, the rodeo community is one that is there for you, and they will get you through it.
Well, and I think that there's such a misconception and shame, almost, if I can say that, of asking for help. It's like it makes you feel weak and or shameful and or guilty, like I shouldn't have that problem, and all these things. But we're human, right? And so it's going to happen. And you've got to, like you said, work through that and have the people that are there to help you work through that. And I want to touch on how you said you and your husband have that kind of relationship. And, I so admire and value that, because they, I have found out they can't read your mind. Although they should be able to read your mind, they can't read your mind. So, but that's one thing as a woman, I'm like, okay, he has no idea what I'm thinking. And even though I'm like, really targeting, you should be understanding, he's not understanding if I don't say it. So yeah, I think that is so cool. But, I think that it's really good to talk about that there is help. You can get help. And there's no shame in that. You are getting yourself, you are making an active choice to move forward, to move further, to go up. And that means you're not staying in that place. And so there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that at all. And having that tribe of friends, or that, and maybe it's a friend or person. It doesn't, I think we say having a tribe, and you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't have 10 people, then, I don't have, no. It looks different for everybody. It might be one person, it might be two, it might be 10, whatever that looks like for you and your support system, that's all that matters. But there's nothing wrong with getting help and making those choices to get stronger mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you go through that trial of your life in that phase, and you're also learning about your body. So then where do you go from there?
So from there, it was just a progression, just one I remind myself every day, one day at a time, one step at a time, because I think so often we get ahead of ourselves, right? We want it now. And that's, I mean, it's life, one step at a time. But I just progressed and I started to get stronger and better. And I finally got permission 3.5 years after the birth of my daughter. I got permission from my doctors and physical therapists to start riding again. But by that point, I was also teaching classes locally to help other women with core and pelvic floor issues. So I was very deep into let's help other women, whether they sneeze, pee, laugh, pee, they have, if I'm allowed to say, pain when they have sex, diastasis recti, just not feeling like they had a strong core or they'd lost so much confidence. I was working with those women, and I really kind of had a lot of imposter syndrome because I wasn't fully healed. And so I wasn't quite back on my horse yet. And I was like, how am I teaching and telling people I'm getting better, but I'm not on my horse yet? But 3.5 years after the birth of my baby, I was able to get back on. And from there, I just walked. I did a lot of trail riding and a lot of just trotting around the yard, just small steps. And then the next year, my husband came to me and he said, hey, we're going to this rodeo, and it's one of our favorite local rodeos. And I said, okay, he had just started competing again as well after he took a break. And I said, oh, okay, thinking he was just going to team rope. And he says, and I entered you in the breakaway roping. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, I have not roped in, 6 years at this point, because it was really hard even after my first baby to get back into it. Just the time. I didn't have the time. I was working full time. I had a baby. Money was tight. And so anyway, I entered that rodeo with zero roping in 6 years. I roped ears on my calf and I was really bummed, but I came out of that arena realizing like I could feel my hips and my core and my shoulders. And I was like, my body and my riding is different, but not in a bad way. It was so different because I had been working on my body for 4 years at that point. And it was like this realization that all of these little itty bitty things that I had been doing for the last 4 years were coming together. And then I was like, I can do this. So I told my husband, I was like, we got to find me another horse, because I was riding his heel horse. I was riding my husband's heel horse that day, and he had never been through a barrier. He jumped the barrier. It was a nightmare of a run, but it was such a confidence builder of the work that I do works. And it was then in that moment that I was like, I need to create a program specific for riding women. And while it's not fully it's not fully specific to core and pelvic floor anymore, it's still, it's just about getting the body more balanced so that they can feel more comfortable and more confident in their body's abilities. Let's get the body stronger and more balanced so that you can compete better.
Well, and I love that. That's one thing that Doug and I work on all the time is my core and my balance. And one thing that I have really been intrigued about is, and I've said this a lot, I was under the impression initially that it was like tons of hard work, sweating, cardio, all the things to make your core strong. When in tune, the things that we do are very slow and very weight resistant and focused mentally, mentally too. It's like counting down and counting all these things. So it's like a double workout, I feel like, for me. But it just really made a huge difference and an impact. So talk to me a little bit. I know you have a little bit of workouts, but then also it's more of like fine tuning, and there's rehabbing. There's all sorts of different levels. So break that down for me on what your thoughts are on the workouts and kind of how you go about them, and then for each level of person that you work with and or group.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard for me to quantify this. Like, it's because there's so many different directions I could take this. But the number one thing that I look at when I start working with somebody is their posture, their body alignment. And I know there's several trainers that do that, but what I'm essentially looking for is muscle imbalances. And how is your body working? How is it moving? What muscles are firing, which muscles are not firing? Because like you said, there's so often when people hear that I'm a personal trainer, they're like, oh, so you just go sweat in the gym all day. And my husband jokes with me because he watches my workouts sometimes, and he's like, these are like grandma exercises. But then he does them
while you're canning. I mean,
while I'm canning, I'm like totally this granny. But it was funny because I've had him do a couple of my videos and he cannot do them.
You're like, who's the granny now?
Because I don't just target the big muscles. You know, we talk a lot about the core. I think that's everyone's number one focus when they go to the gym. Like, a lot of people want a stronger core. And we so often focus on just the six pack muscles, you know, that let's do sit-ups, let's do V-sits, let's do the hard shred type workouts, when really we really want the transverse abdominals to be working. That's what supports you. And so a lot of the exercises I do are very small. They're slow, but it's targeting these little tiny parts of the body that you may have not thought about before, just because our body is so interconnected, and there's so many little things that we don't think about. But with society, we're mostly sedentary. You know, we have office jobs, or we're sitting in a truck traveling rodeo to rodeo every day. And we're not out gathering berries and hunting all the time like our ancestors did. So our bodies have changed over time, and there's all sorts of weaknesses that can happen. And when that happens, we're not able to move the way that we need to be able to move to be competitive in the arena and to be pain-free and have less injuries and all of that good stuff. So that's what I'm really targeting. Some of my videos that I have, we just work the toes and the feet, because they're directly connected to your calves, which is then connected to your hamstrings and your hips and your shoulders and your core. And so we really walk through each little part with the slow work. And then after people go through my program, then most of them go on to do harder workouts with other trainers, because now they're able to move more effectively and do.
They've built up those things in their body that were lacking.
Yep.
Well, and I think that, you know, I mean, honestly, you think about it, especially we'll just talk about breakaway roping. You know, we've broke it down and fine tuned it to the smallest little niche detail. And so really it makes total sense that you're doing that, you know, physically as well. I mean, I don't know that I've ever really thought about my big toes. You know what I mean? But really my toes, and then everything, you know, as you're sitting here talking about that, I'm like, yeah, everything is connected. And we do overlook, I think, or I've never thought about it this way, you know, how each and everything that we're doing is affecting one piece or one part of the body or the other, and muscle groups and all of those things. And so it's really makes a lot of sense if you logically sit down and think about it, you know, even though you're like, oh, like you said, your husband, like, oh yeah, right. You know, this isn't really even going to be hard, but it is hard because he hasn't used those muscle groups. And so, you know, I think it's just a new generation and a new way and perception and of thinking, and really targeting those overlooked things in our body that are making a difference in our everyday movements and for allowing us to compete at the best of our abilities.
Yeah, for sure. You brought it up a little bit, like we don't think about our bodies very often, especially in rodeo. Other sports, you have a coach that works out with you and they give you workouts and they kind of help you through things because it's you and you alone. And I think in rodeo, there's this, I see it all the time. We get to a rodeo and we take such good care of our horses. They have the acupuncture and the chiropractor and a good farrier. And we focus so much on our horse, but then we don't realize how much our body affects us, but it also affects our horse. If I'm dropping my left hip unknowingly, it affects my horse's performance as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're starting to see a turnover in our industry of, it can't just be about my horse. I have to do some work too. But then a lot of people are going straight to the shred workouts, which are great. But I think there needs to be a little bit of foundation, just like with our horse. Mm-hmm. We have to teach our horse how to move and stop. And that's what I'm struggling with my horse right now is stopping. We have no brakes, which is really important in breakaway roping.
One of my good friends and a coach told me one time, all you have to do is rope the calf and slam on the brakes. And I was like, yep, you are totally right. Just that new perspective. So I'm just going to relay her information to you. Slam on the brakes,
Yes, slam on the brakes.
Talk to me. Let's break down a little bit about your programs. We've talked about this. We've kind of laid the foundation. You started in the pelvic floor, and then you've evolved to, building the foundation of the body, of the muscle groups, of all things for women, ropers, and competitors, and men too, I'm sure. So talk to me about your online programs. You have a couple different options. You have one that's coming up starting April 11th. We're very excited about. Get signed up for that. So break that down for me and talk to me a little bit about what you've got going on and the options for everybody who's listening.
Yeah, for sure. So the program that I have coming up April 11th, I run a boot camp, and I actually call it the unboot camp. And it's just kind of a play on word of we're unbooting the traditional fitness beliefs, that you can be strong and sweaty without having to run 8 miles, so we're just kind of unbooting the traditional fitness program. But with that, it's a 6-week program that we do. And each week you get 2 different videos. One is more strength and a little bit of cardio, and the other one is more flow type yoga. So you get the strength and you get the lengthening. And so in that program, there's 12 different videos. You go back and forth between the 2. And then I meet with the group once a week to go over questions, to dive deeper into it. I look at people's form. We explore some more body connection stuff in those calls. And that one goes for 6 weeks. And then I also have a 12-week program. It's called Outright the Competition. And it goes through 3 different stages of the program. They get increasingly harder as you go. But each stage, you stay in it for 3 weeks. There's 5 videos. And then each week, there's also like a body anatomy or biomechanics, kind of the why behind the exercises. Because I think sometimes we do exercises and we're not really sure why we're doing them.
Oh,
like
100%.
The exercises, it may seem kind of silly or stupid, but we walk through a little bit of the whys behind it. Mm-hmm. But with that 12-week program, it is a lifetime access program. So you pay once, you have those videos for life. And then every other week, I do a group coaching call where we get together and we discuss, we go over things people are struggling with, or, sometimes people just bring me questions of, can you explain this further? And we go through those every other week. So, and that one can also be found on my website. So
And I think too, the why, I want to touch on that a little bit. For me is if I understand why, then I become more aware of where we're targeting and what we're targeting, which I'm a nerd. So I like to learn too, I know everybody's not that way, but I want to know why. It seems like a lot of women or that are my friends as well. They want to know like the why, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Like justifying it. And so for me in learning about my nutrition and fitness experience has been that, okay, when I know the why and I don't just do it to do it, but I know, okay, I'm focusing on this part of my body here, then it makes me more aware throughout the day. And then, like you said, when you rode out of the arena for that first time after you were roping and you were like, I feel my hips and I feel my core and I feel all these things. That's the why you were aware, because you had focused on those target places in your body. And so for me, that just kind of brings it full circle as to the why. I keep saying why, on the journey of the motivation to focus on these things, to create this longevity. Yes, for me, I do want to be as fit as I possibly can to compete at the elite level my body can compete at. But also, man, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, I want to be going just as strong. Like I want to be that granny that outcans everybody. So just throwing that out there. But I do want to have that. And I want to be able to go and do and create that longevity in my body to where when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, I'm strong and fit and have done my due diligence to take care of my body. And I think that that's really what we're seeing in this generation is we're creating that foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a huge shift in the fitness industry just in the last couple of years. Even when I first started doing this, there was hardly anybody talking about these things, and the market, more and more people are starting to talk about it, which makes me excited because that's one of my big whys for myself is longevity. I watch my parents and I watch others around me, and I'm like, I don't want to have a bad back when I'm 50, and I don't want to have bad knees. So I work on those things now so that when I'm 60 years old, I can still get up off the floor,
100%. So you have your Unboot camp that's coming up April 11th, 2023. So everybody is gearing up for that. So let's talk a little bit about how people get on and find out about your program and can be a part of it. We also have an exclusive In the Loop discount code. So Nikki, tell me a little bit about how they get signed up for this and what they can look forward to. I know you only offer this 4 times a year. So what's it look like?
Yeah. So to find the program, my website is www.nickynelsoncoaching.com. And then if you go over to services and click, you will see if you just click on the picture underneath the Unboot Camp, it will ask there's a small liability form, and then payment. And then I will send you, it automatically sends you an email, but then I send you the links, for Zoom. And kind of how it goes is the first meeting we have is just a 30-minute get to know you, me making sure everyone has their equipment that they need. My workouts are all very, very, very little equipment, but like you would need resistance band, a yoga block, a yoga half dome, and then a yoga mat. That's pretty much all that I require for my workouts. But we walk through that. I make sure everyone understands how the videos work, how the program works. We get to know each other, and then I send the videos for the first week. And then the next week we meet again and we dive deeper. So, and each week it just gets a little bit harder and we just keep diving. So
I love the deep dives. That is so cool.
Yep.
And so once they've completed your 6-week Unboot camp, we call it. I think that's so cute. There's other options too. You have a 12-week program after that that's called Outride the Competition. You talked a little bit about that. And then also you do private lessons and consultations. You can do it in person or you could do it online. So talk a little bit about that journey and what that looks like, because, I know that we've talked about this. And like I said, I am not a mom, but I do have a lot of friends that are moms. And I really just want to be an advocate for this. I know it's a big problem and it's a very private problem, some of the pelvic floor issues and some of those things. And there's not a whole lot of help for it out there yet. So if somebody is wanting to come to you, we have a little bit of funny story on the backside of Facebook, but is the best way to get in touch with you? Is it social media? Is it email? Is it through your website? What's that look like?
Social media is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And then I would send a link. But also, if you go to my website, there is a link to sign up for the consultations or private sessions. And most of the time people do a consultation I really like to meet people, see if I'm their person, because some personalities get along better than others. So we do a session, we kind of get a game plan, and then we move from there. But in the private sessions, it's really nice for people that don't like the group setting, especially. We move them over and I go over your specific body, your specific compensation patterns, and we set a, we just get a game plan and we go from there and we watch the progression. So, and you can buy one at a time, or I do have package deals as well that you can buy more than one session at a time and schedule them in advance to keep you accountable. So it's kind of up to you. But
I love that. And I really love how you make it a specific thing too. It's, I think that there's value. I just got done working in a group business setting. Paige Lawrence, Paige Champion, just did a group coaching session on a business group. And it was so much fun. We actually got so much out of it. There was 4 of us. And it was like a 3-month deal. And we just got to work with each other each and every week and brainstorm and grow that way. So that was one of my first times working in a group environment like that. And I loved it. I gleaned so many things off of that. But then there's also different things where I'm like, hey, I want this to be personal. I want to go deeper here and I want to go more in depth. And so I love that you offer both of those things. But one of the okay, you guys, if you go and you look up Nikki Nelson Coaching on Facebook, there's a little bit of a fiasco here. So we need you to go and like Nikki Nelson Coaching LLC on Facebook, because Nikki got banned from Facebook. And Nikki, tell us why you got banned from Facebook.
So last summer, my daughter, she's 10, but she had just started goat tying last year, and somebody flagged me for animal cruelty. So Facebook came and deactivated my accounts. And so my business page is still up, but I have no access to it. So last fall, was it August or September, I had to restart everything. So there is a little bit of confusion there, but apparently don't post goat tying videos. I don't know.
She was like, okay, so I have 2 Facebooks, but I can't get rid of this one Facebook because, and I'm like, well, what happened? We're talking through this. And she's like, yeah, I got banned for posting a goat tying video. I'm like, oh man. So I just thought that was just so funny because, yeah. So anyway, she's on all things social media website. But Nikki, I have a question that I ask everybody who comes on my podcast, and I will not let you go without asking you. So if you, on this amazing journey that you've had, if you could go back and tell yourself, your younger self, one thing, what would it be and why?
Ooh. I think I'd tell myself, strive for progression, not perfection.
I love that.
So
perfection is really something that can be a stronghold for sure. I think, especially in women, or for me. I won't speak for anybody else. I'm just speaking for me.
No, for me, I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. And just allowing myself to take the risks and progress instead of waiting until things are perfect, because truth is, it's not ever going to be perfect. So just strive for that 1% every day, I think, is what I would tell my younger self.
I love it. Very cool. I think that's great advice to her. Well, Nikki, it has been Amazing to talk to you. Thank you for being so raw and real about your journey today. And I hope that this has helped somebody out there. If you guys have any issues from the pelvic floor to if you've went through any of these struggles as moms, as wives, I think this is an amazing place. This is a safe place and somewhere to really learn about your body, your mind, and your fitness and all things. So Nikki Nelson Coaching, go check her out. It's NikkiNelsonCoaching.com. Social media, make sure you do the LLC. Don't go for the goat tying one. And Instagram is Nikki Nelson Coaching as well. So I'm very excited to have you today. Thank you so much for being part of our business edition this month. And we'll catch you down the road.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on In the Loop Breakaway Roping Podcast. I truly appreciate all of your loyal support. Don't forget to leave me a review, share this episode with a friend, and if you have any questions, I want to hear from you. Email me at jordan@thebreakawayropingpodcast.com. Go check us out, sign up for our newsletter, get our email alerts, text alerts, and all things breakaway roping. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you down the road.